And now, wielding a red sword. Chapter 3. Princess. The Rajah was older than Mim remembered him. Of course, Mim had been no closer to his father than to his brother. It was not the royal way. He had encountered the man physically perhaps no more than a dozen times in his life, and most of those during his childhood, before his mother had had the bad judgment to bear a daughter and had been divorced and dismissed from palace life. Mim had had no close family life thereafter, and realized now that this had been a considerable part of what he had sought and found in Orb, true love and closeness between individuals. He was not about to give it up. Still, the sight of his father was something of a shock. It was not just that the man was old, but that he was both grand and ill. He was elegantly robed, of course, which was his normal state, with golden embroidery and a necklace of bright rubies, but his bearing was a thing beyond dress. The Rajah could have been naked, and still radiated authority. His illness showed in the sallowness of his complexion and the hollowness of his cheeks. Obviously, magic had buttressed his health, but there were limits even to magic, and the man was inevitably descending toward his release of this body. No wonder he was concerned about the state of his heir. "It is necessary for the heir to have an heir," the Rajah said. "You will be betrothed to a princess of the royal house of Maharashtra, a politically suitable alliance. We are now negotiating the dowry." "Sire, I will not be betrothed," Mim sang. The Rajah gazed at him, nodding. "So it is true. The wench taught you another mode of speech. This is an improvement, though still not ideal." "The wench," Mim sang between his teeth, "is the only one I will marry." The Rajah considered. "Do your duty by the princess, and in due course you may recover the wench as a concubine." Mim turned his head and spat. The courtiers jumped, and a royal guard went so far as to touch his sword, but the Rajah did not react. After a moment he made a tiny gesture with one hand, dismissing his son. Mim bowed and backed away, departing the presence. It had not been a very positive encounter. He was put under house arrest at an attractive palace on the outskirts of Ahmedabad. Naturally, he was not tortured or imprisoned or coerced by magical means. He was the heir. But neither was he given his freedom. He knew he would be freed the moment he gave his word to cooperate, but he would not give that word. The word of a sovereign was inviolate and never given insincerely. So he languished in total comfort, provided with gourmet meals, phenomenal entertainment, and expert instruction in any art that might interest him. 2 weeks into his confinement, he tried to escape. He was unsuccessful, as he had known he would be. He was merely testing the defenses. In the past, his father had not cared about his whereabouts. Now the Rajah did care, and that made all the difference. Mim could not escape. After the first month, an ambassador from the Rajah came to pose the question. Would he now consent to the betrothal? Mim turned his head again and spat, and the ambassador departed. But the Rajah's wish was not lightly scorned. 2 days later, a beautiful concubine was ushered into the palace. Her hair was lustrous midnight, and gems sparkled in it like stars. "The Rajah bids me be yours," she said. "You will never be mine," Mim sang curtly. Her lovely face stiffened. The palace guards hustled her away. 1 hour later the chief of the palace guards approached. "Prince Heir, the Rajah bids you witness what we have done." Curious, Mim accompanied the man to the front gate of the palace. There, mounted on a tall spike, was the head of the concubine. The gems still sparkled in her hair. A month later another concubine arrived. This one was a creature of the Northlands, with bright blue eyes and hair like finely wrought silver, bound about by threads of gold. "The Rajah bids me be yours," she said. Mim hesitated. He realized that this was a game in which his father's resources of persuasion dwarfed his own powers of rejection. At best, his adamants could lead to a chain of lovely heads upon the spikes of the front gate. At worst, the Rajah would obtain and present Orb herself in this manner. "Remain," he told her curtly. "I will summon you at need." That sufficed for the moment. But when the week expired and he had not made use of her, this woman's head abruptly appeared beside the first, on the gate. The third month another concubine arrived. Her hair was the color of burnished copper and buckled in place by combs of fine green jadeite, and her eyes mirrored the jadeite in hue. Mim closed his eyes. "Forgive me, Orb," he prayed. "I cannot be the murderer of these lovely women. They are too much like you." Then he took the hand of the concubine, and brought her to his bed, and dispatched her maidenhead that hour. In this manner did the Rajah slowly bend his son to his will. But still Mim refused to agree to the betrothal. His body was captive, but his heart remained his own, pledged to Orb. 2 years later, the Rajah himself came to the palace. The ravages of his illness had intensified, but his will had not abated. "If you care not for your own interest," the Rajah said, "consider that of your kingdom. I will pass within 3 years, and our enemies conspire against us, but the heir is not ready. Your presence and the alliance with Maharashtra can secure our frontier against serious incursion. This is necessary for the welfare of all citizens of Gujarat." "Adopt a worthier heir," Mim sang. "Let me rejoin my beloved." "The Princess of Maharashtra is beautiful and accomplished, completely worthy of any man. Accept the betrothal, and all else is yours." "I will not marry any woman but my beloved. Release me, and all else is yours." "Fairness is a virtue, even in a prince," the Rajah responded. "Spend 1 month with the princess at the Honeymoon Castle. If thereafter you still decline to betroth her, I will grant you your freedom." Victory so suddenly. "Agreed," Mim said. What was 1 month's temptation compared to the 2 years he had survived? The Honeymoon Castle was situated in remote mountains. It was a phenomenally attractive estate, with sculptured hedges, gardens of infinite color, picturesque architecture, and every likely luxury. No grounds crew maintained it. An enduring spell kept it in perfect condition, with an ideal climate independent of what existed beyond. Favored nobles were granted weekends here when they married, and the Rajah himself retired here when in need of restoration. But for 1 full month it was to be Mim's residence. Of course a person could get bored with even the most wonderful accommodations in the absence of human company. That was why there were always 2 people here, and only 2. For the most remarkable property of the Honeymoon Castle was the magic it performed on the minds of those who came into its ambience. The emotion and conscious thoughts of any person here expanded in a fashion beyond his body, and became manifest to any other person present. There were no secrets of feeling here. That was why it was so potent for those who were freshly in love, and why it was no place for those who were no longer in love. However, Mim was forewarned and prepared. He had never before been to the Honeymoon Castle, but he doubted that its magic could shake his enduring love for Orb. If there were any question, His close contact with this simpering, spoiled southern princess would eliminate it. He had in Orb a standard of excellence that no other woman could match. What was her name? He had almost forgotten it already. Rapture of malachite. That was it, as though there could be delight in cold green stone. It was surely as ironic a designation as his own, pride of the kingdom. No, he knew he would emerge from this encounter victorious, and be free at last to rejoin his only true love. He stood alone at the landing patio, awaiting the arrival of the princess's carpet. There were no servants, of course. No other minds could be permitted to snoop on the naked thoughts and feelings of royalty. The two of them would be truly alone for the duration, until the carpets returned in a month to pick them up. It arrived on schedule, first a speck above the mountain pass in the distance, then a floating shape, flat below, lumpy above. Finally it coasted in for the landing, a broad carpet bearing a cushioned, curtained cage. It settled gently to the tiles. The cage opened, and the princess stepped out. Mim stood in the shadow of the gate and gazed at her, this nemesis of his love that he had never seen before. The Princess Rapture of Malachite of Maharashtra was a spectacular figure of a woman. She wore a belted robe that caressed a figure reminiscent of an hourglass, with a sash of shining pale gold mesh and buttons that were deep red rubies. Her hair was a lustrous, flowing river of blue-black that whirled and swirled its way down about her shoulders and framed her face most prettily. Her eyes were like those of oxen of the lowland breed, great and dark and liquid. Her tiny ears showed at the edge of her coursing hair like shells at the fringe of a lake, sparkling iridescently. Her mouth was a perfect dainty crimson bow, too delicate for anything approaching a coarse word. Her breasts beneath the robe were like twin fawns, firm and perfectly rounded, surely as soft to the touch as man's desire could wish. Her hips... She turned to face him. "Stay your lascivious thoughts, ruffian," she thought fiercely at him. "Have you forgotten already where you are?" Indeed he had, for the moment. Her amazing beauty had smitten him unprepared, disrupting his anger at her presence before it could be fairly settled. Now he felt himself blushing, and that infuriated him, and made his face burn more hotly. She laughed, satisfied to be one up on him. He had broadcast his impressions as openly as any schoolboy might have, while she had maintained her reserve. But now she sobered. "Know, O Prince of Gujarat, that this union is no more my wish than yours," she said clearly, and now her emotion came at him, controlled anger. "I love another, and will always love him. But for the will of my father, I would be with him this moment and forever. You are but an obstacle in my way, and we shall pass this trial most readily if you keep your body and your mind well clear of mine." Mim could hardly believe it. "You are against this betrothal?" he sang. "That I did not know." "There is surely much you do not know, Prince of the Tongue-Tied, and much you had best never learn. Now come into the open so I can see the image of my enemy." Embarrassed anew, Mim stepped out into the light. "Why, he is a handsome man," she thought with surprise. "That is immaterial," he responded in the same manner, and now it was her turn to blush. She had been caught the same way. It was one thing to know that their thoughts would be completely open to each other, and quite another to experience the reality. "True, pride of the kingdom," she replied, and that set him back again. Even as it happened, he kept forgetting. "Choose what quarters you prefer," he thought quickly, to cover up whatever else he might otherwise think. "I shall take quarters on the opposite side." "There is nowhere on the premises that we can avoid each other's minds," she said. "Only mental discipline will suffice." "That will suffice," he agreed grimly. So they selected suites on opposite sides of the castle. But that proved to be impractical, because there was neither food nor water in the suites. They had to emerge to obtain these things. There was a kitchen section, stocked with all manner of delicacies, but it was so constructed as to require the simultaneous action of two parties. One person had to hold open the pantry door while the other reached for the food. It could not otherwise be obtained. It spoiled rapidly outside the magic pantry, so that it was not feasible to cooperate for one big raid. Two people had to be present for every fresh meal. The water was even more of a problem. It issued from an old-fashioned pump with a long red handle. One person had to pump while the other held the cup in place. There was no other way. Each served the other for a cupful, but even this evaporated the moment it was taken from the dining chamber. They were stuck together for meals. That was the least of it. "But I want to wash," the princess said, annoyed. Mim pondered. "I could pump while you sat under the spout," he sang. She turned on him a withering look. "Or I could pump while you sat under it." He appreciated the problem. "Believe me, Rapture, I have no desire to gawk at your fair flesh," he thought. "You lie, Pride," she gritted. True, he realized. He did not love her and had no wish to be corrupted by her, but he was a man and enjoyed the sight of voluptuous female flesh wherever it occurred, and hers was as voluptuous as such flesh came. He was a voyeur at heart. "And I have no wish to corrupt you," she retorted. "You lie." He thought back at her, for beneath her overt anger at the situation was a covert pleasure at his assessment of her body. She was a true woman, subject to fits of vanity. She wanted to be almost irresistibly appealing to all men, while obliging only that one she chose at her convenience. "Damn you," she thought, and her sudden rage was like a crack of thunder. He smiled somewhat bitterly. "This is the nature of this castle," he reminded her, "to force us together, to set up feedback, to make me desire you, and you to appreciate that desire until we both are lost in mutual admiration." "But we are royalty, not animals," she pointed out. "We have no need to succumb slavishly to feedback." He decided to change the subject, for it was treacherous. They were disciplined human beings, and she was evidently as dedicated to her other love as he was to his, a trait he admired in her. "Watch your thought," she snapped. So it behooved them to cooperate to avoid the obvious temptations. He must not look at her flesh or think any appreciative thoughts about it, no matter how luscious. Animal. He wasn't sure whether that was her savage thought or his. This business was trickier than he had anticipated. "True," she agreed. "I will turn my back and pump while you wash," he sang, having a bright notion. "Then you can do the same for me. We need never gaze upon each other's flesh." She considered. She didn't like it. Her feeling was consistent with her thought, but saw no better alternative. "Let's experiment. You pump while facing away, and I will wash my hands." Agreed," he stuttered, then cursed himself for forgetting to sing. "Prince, we can surely discover significant things to detest in each other," she said, sympathetic. "We need not be ashamed of that which we have no power over. Speak as you will, it is not an issue between us." She forgave him his stuttering. Mim was for the moment overwhelmed by a surge of gratitude. So few of either sex ever bother to understand. "Stop that," she thought fiercely. "I don't want your feeling." She was trying to do the proper thing, which was to maintain her alienation from him. He understood perfectly and was trying to do the same himself. But her compassion for his handicap cut through to his deepest self-image. He could mask, but never quite abolish his gratitude. "Oh, pump the pump!" she cried in frustration, struggling with imperfect success to stave off that gratitude. He turned about, reaching behind him to grasp the handle awkwardly. His gaze fell on the wall he now faced. It was a wall-sized mirror. Mim sighed. The builder of Honeymoon Castle seemed to have thought of everything. Well, he could simply close his eyes. "Better a blindfold," she said. They tried that. He draped a blanket over his head and pumped, while she set about her business. "Oh!" she exclaimed abruptly. Cold water, no doubt. He kept pumping, but now his thoughts focused determinedly on speculations about what flesh the flowing water must be touching to evoke such a reaction. He tried to divert his mind, but there was no way now not to think about what he shouldn't. Clear water, glistening breasts. "Oh, this is worse than just plain looking would be," she exclaimed in frustration. "Take off that blanket." "But I'm trying to control my—" She reached across and tore off the blanket. Mim blinked. There, before him, was a bare bosom every bit as grand as the one he had been trying not to imagine. "Might as well get this over with," she muttered, her spoken words almost blotted out by the underlying anger she broadcast. She stripped the rest of the way, while Mim, bemused, watched, ashamed for the admiration he was unable to suppress. She was indeed the perfect woman. In due course she finished and dried and dressed. "Now it is your turn," she said ferociously. Mim quailed. Fair was fair, but naturally he had suffered the masculine reaction. If he stripped, this would be all too evident. Rapture blushed. Some other time, she decided, and fled. Of course his thought had been about as revealing as his body would have been. He blushed himself. He had not meant or wanted to expose her to that. She was a fine, discreet woman who had probably never seen a man in— Enough! Her thought came, undiminished in intensity despite the distance she had put between them. At that, he had to laugh ruefully. The castle was making fools of them both. Rapture reappeared. She was trying to maintain her anger, but the perverse humor of it was spreading to her. "We must escape this castle," she exclaimed. Yes," he agreed fervently. Yes," she echoed, and she was not mocking him. But neither of them had much of an idea how to do it. The estate was girt by a high enchanted wall that could not be scaled. With a lake on the back, the only approach was by magic carpet, and they had none. They agreed to ponder during the night and compare notes in the morning. They got through the evening meal, and then Rapture shut her eyes and pumped while Mim washed. If she peeked, it didn't matter, for she could not help but read his physical state through his mind. She merely flushed and continued pumping while he counted numbers backwards constantly to drown out what he could of his own thoughts. He was glad when it was over. They separated, each going to the appropriate suite. But Mim had hardly entered his when her scream resounded through his mind. He charged to her section, threw open the curtain— naturally there were no doors— and found her standing with her delicate fist in her mouth. "Something was there!" she cried. From her mind he got the image, some shadowy, skeletal, demonic figure that had sought to sneak up on her, but retreated when she turned to look. "But there are no other people or creatures on the premises," Mim reminded her. "We would intercept their thoughts." "I saw it," she insisted, and he knew she had, or believed she had. Which left open the possibility of something other than a person or a creature, he realized. Was this castle haunted by demons? "Demons!" she exclaimed, horrified. But why would there be anything like that in a castle intended for lovers? "To ensure that they are together," she said. And that, of course, was it. Those who insisted on sleeping apart would discover company of an unpleasantly alien nature. Rapture was obviously extremely ill at ease. He felt it throughout her mind. What were they to do? "I will ignore it," she said bravely. But though she intended to make the effort, he read her deep fear of the demonic. She would not be able to sleep. It was a man's business to protect a woman from whatever threats existed, in whatever way he could. Mim knew that his sword would not be effective against a demon, but that was not the point. "I will stand guard," he thought. "I couldn't ask you to do that," she protested. "We must sleep apart." But she wished he would do that, for she was genuinely afraid. "I will sleep by the door," he decided, amending his notion. "That will be no hardship." Her relief was manifest. "I wish I could thank you, Prince Pride," she said. They both knew why she could not. "I prefer Mim," he sang. "Mim, the name they gave you at the sideshow," she said, reading the context. "Where you met the woman you love." "Where I was happy," he agreed. She retired to her large, soft bed of feather pillows and colorful quilts, and he settled down in the doorway and slept in the way a warrior did, alert for any intrusion. They left the lamp on so that nothing could enter unseen. In a moment he jerked awake. A horrendous demon was tiptoeing toward the bed. Rapture turned and saw it and screamed. Mim leaped up, his sword whipping from its sheath, but the demon charged through a wall, making no sound, and disappeared. He turned back to the bed, where Rapture was shaking with reaction. Her emotion was a tangled mass of loathing, fear, and shame, for she knew she was imposing on Mim, despite her resolve to cause him no more trouble. He went to her, sat on the bed, and took her into his arms. "It is the nature of the innocent to be afraid of evil," he thought soothingly. He felt no fear himself, of course, merely disgust that he could have allowed an intrusion of this nature. He had been on guard, had he not? She sobbed into his shoulder. Then, buoyed by his lack of fear, she calmed. I apologize for my weakness that so inconveniences you," she said. "I never meant—" "I know." The castle made deception impossible. She was not practicing any artifice in her fear, and he practiced none in his lack of it. They had been trained for different things. "But this is exactly what the castle means to do," she said, "to force us into each other's arms." "There is no love in it," he said. "I would hold a frightened child so." That abashed her further, yet she could not deny it. "If child I must be, then so let it be," she said. "My weakness and my humiliation are laid open to you, and I deserve your contempt." "You showed no contempt when I stuttered," he reminded her. "But you couldn't help that." "And you cannot help this." She paused, considering. "I showed none because I felt none," she said slowly. "But had I felt it, I would have changed my opinion by now. You are a brave man, and a kind one." "I am a prince. I am what I am trained to be." "The bravery, yes," she thought back at him. "The kindness, no." "The best ruler tempers justice with mercy," he thought, echoing what he had been trained. "But with you the mercy is stronger than it should be." This was true, he realized. He had mastered the physical abilities required of his office, but not the emotional ones. Had he possessed proper discipline, he would not have been swayed by the fate of the concubines he rejected, or by the subservience of the cavalry officer who had come to bring him back. He was weak, and his father the Rajah had played upon that weakness with an expert touch. "Oh, Mim," she cried, reading his mind, "I did not know." "It was not your business to know. Was not similar pressure put on you to come here?" "Not exactly. My father simply shipped me here. I had no choice." "Being a woman," he agreed. "A prince must accede, a princess must obey." "Physically," she agreed, "but my heart is my own." "Or his whom you love." "Yes," she agreed. But now another aspect of her embarrassment was spread out involuntarily for his perception. She had no other love. The man she had been interested in was not the equal of Mim, and no prince. That interest had evaporated like vapor in the past few hours. She had resisted coming here simply because she did not like being played like a pawn, assigned to a man for the sake of a political liaison. She was no concubine. "I never thought of you as a concubine," he thought. "Oh, I wish I could keep my thoughts to myself," she wailed. "All my secrets are leaking from me." "Your secrets become you," he responded. "I would rather lie naked to your gaze." She had already stood naked to it when she washed, but he understood exactly what she meant. A woman, more than a man, was a creature of dainty privacies, of hidden places, and it was cruel to expose these. "Thank you," she said. "Lie here, sleep. I will remain alert." "It is our separation that emboldens the demon," she said. "Keep your arms about me and sleep yourself. The demon will not come." Surely true. This intricate, so personal net of the castle annoyed him, but he saw no way to break out of it. They lay down together, she in her negligee, he in his day robe, with his sword on. "Tomorrow we shall flee this place," he thought with determination. "Tomorrow," she agreed. Then, slowly, they slept.